And it felt massively broken that in 2011, 2012, despite $500 billion being spent every year on enterprise software, that Microsoft Office was still the primary toolkit for attorneys. And so we said the missing app inside of Microsoft Office is workflow automation. And that was the idea for Onit.
Today on Law Next, I'm live at Legalweek in New York speaking with Eric Elfman, co-founder and CEO of Onit, a company that just announced a $200 million investment, one of the largest investments ever in a legal technology company. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that profiles the entrepreneurs and innovators who are driving what's next in law. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, on to this week's interview. And just a word to our listeners, if it's a little noisy here, I am literally sitting on the floor here at Tech Show, at Legal Tech in New York. And it's pretty noisy. There's people walking by, so please excuse that. So Eric Elfman, welcome to Law Next.
Thank you. Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
I want to talk about the latest news for your company, but before that, I want to kind of walk back a little bit and talk about your background and the company's background. You are a self-described serial entrepreneur. You've founded other companies in the past, probably most notably DataCert. You and your Onit co-founder, Eric Smith, founded DataCert back in 1998. Tell me a little bit about DataCert and what you were doing there.
Yeah, we kind of look back at that as our starter company that did very, very, very well. Back in 98, matter management was a well-established market. What wasn't was electronic invoicing. Any view of a legal matter that included the financial component, and as everybody knows, when you get into the Fortune 500 companies, huge parts of the legal budget goes to outside lawyers. And so when you're just looking at the subjective data, the words around the matter, it didn't really give a clear picture. And so DataCert's original idea was, let's be the financial management to add into every matter management company that existed. And so that was the business model. We went and integrated with every matter management vendor and augmented what they were already doing until we eventually became bigger than all the matter management vendors.
And DataCert was acquired by Wolters Kluwer?
It was in 2014. And it was one of the biggest transactions in the legal tech space at the time as well.
In 2014?
Yeah, that was when it was acquired. Now, Wolters Kluwer was an investor through the years. Okay. They started trying to acquire us when we were very young. Yeah. We didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I was almost thinking they had acquired you much sooner than that. I hadn't realized it was that much later.
No, they had a significant stake. But yeah, the full acquisition wasn't until 2014.
Yeah, and when did you leave DataCert?
I left in 2008, so I ran it for 10 years, had a couple of hundred employees. I was getting frustrated with, what naturally happens in software companies. You get a huge install base, it gets harder to make fundamental change, and so we very much face that exact same thing. And I was looking towards software as a service as a model that we ought to be pursuing, and that was against everything the company was built on. We were very much behind the firewall installed, and so it was very scary to folks to make that significant of a change. And so unfortunately, like happens so many times, when you want to continue to be innovative, it gets harder in a more established company. We had lots of investors at the time who were more content with the safe route than the entrepreneurial route. And ultimately, I was still an entrepreneur at heart.
Yeah. So if I've got my facts right, it was 9 years ago at this show that you launched Onit. 2010? Is that right?
Yeah, that was the early days. I mean, we weren't even selling, we didn't even
it was
know.
The beta, I think you were calling it a beta.
Yeah, and in fact, that wasn't the product that eventually became the success of Onit. Right. That was an effort in legal project management.
Right.
As we were trying to, look, when we founded Onit, we didn't have the idea for the company. As crazy as that sounds, we didn't know what the idea was. But Eric and I, and we partnered with Jill and John Gilman, the other co-founders of this business, we put some money in it and bought some developers and started playing with ideas.
Yeah.
The first was legal project management in 10. That's ultimately not what we found as the big idea. Ultimately, we said it's all about process automation, not just in legal, but in every aspect of the organization. But yeah, we launched in 10.
Yeah.
In 11, we had started focusing on process automation.
Yeah.
At this show in 2012, we started selling our product for the first time to process automation.
Right, and I remember that. I think I talked to you those first couple of years, and the first year, as you say, it was you from the first year to the second year, I won't say pivoted, but you evolved a little bit in that way. But by the second year, you really had kind of pivoted into what you were at that point talking about more as an app-based series of products. And I was going to ask you what the original vision was for Onit, and I guess you said you didn't really quite have an original vision. So how did that evolve? How did you get to the point of deciding what this should look like?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were really fortunate. We didn't have this opportunity in DataCert, right? We were, poor when we started DataCert. We had the idea, but we had to figure out how to start making money pretty quick to start to pay the bills. The same wasn't true here. We had the luxury to be patient and not try and rush to market with something that we weren't passionate about or that we thought wasn't a big idea. And so the mission was, let's find a big idea and let's be patient and don't come to market until it's actually ready to execute on that big idea. And so we collected people from our past. John Gilman and I and Jill started working on an advisory group of general counsel, middle market and big market, and we started testing ideas against them. The epiphany was lawyers don't want to be project managers. What they want to do is do their legal work and not all the administrative stuff. And so to the degree we could remove the administrative burden from a lawyer, then you actually have lawyers using software. And so that's where we kind of stumbled into this idea that, oh my God, lawyers, despite having $1 million matter spend management systems and document management systems, they're still doing most of their work in email, and they're still writing their stuff down on a yellow pad. And so email had become for them not only their process automation, their workflow tool, that's how approvals got done, that's how requests came in from the business. It was also their knowledge management tool, because that's where all the back and forth around the contracts and the legal matters resided. And it felt massively broken that in 2011, 2012, despite $500 billion being spent every year on enterprise software, that Microsoft Office was still the primary toolkit for attorneys. And so we said the missing app inside of Microsoft Office is workflow automation. And that was the idea for Onit.
I like just look at your website. There's a quote on the website that says, "We do better workflows, not better databases."
Yeah, right.
I thought that was a wonderfully descriptive application. So how do you describe the company today? Where are you at today?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And so I've had to face the what is Onit question, not only for investors, but employers and customers as well. And I'll split it in two, right? There's a difference between fundamentally what our intellectual property is and what we market and sell. And it's going to sound weird, but I think you'll understand. Our intellectual property is a workflow platform. It helps automate processes regardless of the process it is. It could be finance, it could be Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, it could be HIPAA compliance, it could be contract management, or it could be a legal matter. And the platform is designed for non-developers to be able to go in and configure the solution. And literally in an hour, you can configure a solution to a basic process, whether it's you communicating with the marketing people, trying to interview CEOs, whatever that process is, we could come up with a better process for that. And so all we really are is a workflow platform. Now, tons of our Fortune 500 customers license that platform from us. It's called Aptitude, Apptitude. They license it to write their own apps, but the majority of our revenue comes from Onit pre-configuring versions of that workflow platform to solve problems with a big market and an opportunity for a young company like Onit. So enterprise legal management, matter spin management. We kind of founded Onit not to be in that space. Not that I didn't like it, I loved it, but we just thought it was a well-served, saturated market. We didn't think there was room for someone young. Ultimately, our customers pulled us into that market, and we said, "Hey, there is a room for a better mousetrap." And so we pre-configured for ELM. We did that for contract management, legal holds, and so we're a series of products, quote unquote, that are really just configurations on the platform. The advantage to our customers are, once your users know how to interact with Onit for one thing, they know how to interact it for everything else you roll it out for. There's not a bunch of training for that. And it's all part of the same data structure inside the organization.
Is it analogous at all to the Salesforce model in the sense of having a platform and then having these apps that plug into the platform, except that you're building the apps instead of third parties building the apps? Or?
A little, although Salesforce is much more software development on the Force.com platform, where we're configuration. You don't have to be a developer to configure solutions inside of Onit. But it's similar, although Salesforce started as a major product, and then Force.com was a way to augment the product. We kind of started with the platform first, and then the product, Salesforce.com, popped out of the platform itself.
Okay. So your big news just recently was a major investment, $200 million investment from K1 Investment Management. What is the nature of this investment? I think I heard you say, I think it was on your own company podcast, that you weren't out looking for an investment, that this kind of happened and it fit and it looked right. So what was it about this that looked right to you?
Yeah, well, look, you know me from my past. I like to start companies and grow them fast, and so investors are always part of the calculus of companies I start anyway. And so we had already raised $17 million to get to where we were. And while we weren't looking for this next round of funding, we were probably 3 or 6 months away. I've always had in my mind that where Onit is going is further than even DataCert went in terms of the scale of the opportunity that we're facing. And so we're self-aware enough to know our own limitations, right? I haven't grown a company to 100 million and 500 million and $1 billion worth of revenue, but that's the opportunity inside of Onit. And so I wanted to bring the next level of investor on board that wasn't just a check. And we had multiple offers in this round, even though we weren't looking. Some were more passive investors, and some were more active. And K1 was an active investor, and that's exactly what I was looking for. They bought almost 100 companies over the last 7 years. About 25 of them are what they call platform companies like Onit. The other 75 are acquisitions for those 25 platform companies.
So, and this is described as a strategic investment. What does that mean in investment lingo?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, it means that they're going to be active in pulling on the oars of the company, whereas my other investments were not active. They write a check and they were great to us, right? So nothing against them, but we meet in board meetings once a quarter and they just expect good things, but they're not designed to help their companies go to the next level. The majority of the people inside of K1 are operations people, sales and marketing, finance, accounting, R&D, product management. They actually bring those people to bear as consultants to our own team to say, look, here's what we've done in 100 other companies, and here's what we did to take this company from 1 to 100. Let us actually get in and help you. Not only that, the strategic nature of what they do. They've got a pipeline of other acquisitions for us. We've got 20 companies on our pipeline that we may acquire over the years. And so strategic investment to me is continue to fund organic growth because we're still growing almost 100% every single year, and DataCert could not do that at this size. It's very hard to do at scale. Continue to fund that as the primary strategy, but figure out how you start to augment it, not only with other products as we're working on now, but other companies that you can acquire and bring into the fold.
And does it suggest a longer term investment?
I don't think so. I think
necessarily?
I think it may be less. There's a
Okay.
whole new breed of private equity.
Yeah,
It's not. This isn't your old private equity.
Right.
This isn't KKR. Taking American Express private. That whole barbarians at the gate
okay.
story. This is a younger breed that know. When they're investing in a company like Onit, it's for growth. It's not for EBITDA, right? It's not for eking out the last penny of profitability and firing people. It's for investing in the top lines. When you're growing as fast as we are, that's the value generator in the company, not the EBITDA. And so, look, I don't know when a next transaction would occur, but if you look at this new breed of company, 3 to 5 years, you will see a trading of hands, right? So look at Mitratech as an example. They sold to Vista. A few years later, they sold to TA. A few years later, they sold to HIG.
Yeah.
And so not only are the private equity firms making money along the way, so are the employees of the company.
Yeah. We were talking before we started recording. There's been some back and forth about numbers, and investment isn't really a horse race, but there's been some talk about what's been the largest investment in legal tech and who's had the largest investment in legal tech. And by any measure, this is certainly up there. One of the most significant ever in legal technology. And you've been in the legal tech field for a long time, and I'm sure you can know better than anybody that there wasn't this kind of money being thrown around in legal technology. What do you think this says both about your company and about the state of the legal technology industry more broadly?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. When I started the company in '98, some would say at the height of the dot-com boom, there was hardly any money going into legal technology. And when I was going to grad school, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, but a lot like Onit, I didn't have the idea, so I just in my mind decided if I go to work in any industry for a few years with an eye towards finding a problem to solve, that I would find one, and I did, and it happened to be in legal. But my biggest fear was, could I fund this to grow as fast as I wanted? Because there weren't good data points that said you could. Dot-com boom, we were able to draft off everything else that was happening. We were in Houston, we were able to raise angel money, and eventually started funding. And then it took, I think why we're seeing the success today, it took the growth of the DataCerts and the growth of the Mitratechs and the Time Metrics folks and the strategic starting to buy these companies that everybody said, hey, that old adage of don't start a company selling to lawyers or doctors, right? Because that was an adage, you don't do that. Right. It's hard to get money from them, really started to change. And so on the one hand, I think we helped create the environment that let Onit succeed and raise money like this. And on the other, there's 100 other companies that also participated in that, the iManagers of the world. There's a ton of great examples. And so now you talk with almost any VC, and they're going to tell you, hey, we've got a thesis in legal tech, right? They're what they call legal technology. It's sexy, and it was not sexy in '98.
We'll get back to my interview in just a moment, but first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, let's continue this week's interview.
What about the market that you serve more specifically? You've had Onit for 9 years, and you've been in the business for much longer than that. How has that market changed in the time that you've been doing this?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, so remember we're a platform, and we sell that platform. We also sell contract management and legal holds, but 60% of our revenue comes from enterprise legal management, this old space that CompInfo founded probably pushing 30 years ago. It has definitely evolved. When we got pulled into ELM in 2013 and 14, our original thought was there's plenty of big players out there. Every Fortune 500 already has a system. Why would we do that? Turns out a third of the Fortune 500 was refreshing their systems, and they were looking at new technology. And we also looked at the incumbents, my own former company included, and said there's an opportunity. The technology is getting older as a class. There's not a lot of innovation out there in the matter spend management space. And so we said, third of the Fortune 500 refreshing, opportunity for a better mousetrap. And so we did it a couple of times. People pulled us into it. And we said, there's a market here. And literally, Bob, the last 2 years, we have won more than 50% of the RFPs we're on. And that's against every other vendor. Doesn't mean we're seeing all of the RFPs, but when we get it, we're winning more than half.
That's great. Has the sort of rise in legal operations over the last couple of years, have you seen that as significant? Have you seen that has that changed your relationship at all with some of the companies that you deal with?
Absolutely. Look, it's been a great innovation and helped propel the whole legal market for corporations forward. You know, when we started selling, you wouldn't really touch the general counsel. They were older and not thinking about this. It was typically some younger attorney who was running technology for the legal department. It was harder to find and pierce the veil of the corporate legal department, find those people in 98, 99. Yeah. Legal ops, holy smokes, you know exactly who your buyer is, and almost every corporation at the high end of the Fortune 500 has one. They're smart, they understand technology, they understand change management. I think it's been huge in the market, and I've loved watching it evolve.
Yeah. So the investment that you got, I think I read or heard you say that some of that is going to pay off some of the prior investors and early investors in the company. To the extent this is new money coming to you, what are the plans? How are you going to be using this to develop on it from here?
Yeah, well, look, when we first started talking, maybe we were 2 or 3 people. We're 175 people today. That's roughly double from about 18 months ago, and we have 100 open positions. So this time next year we'll be 275. So on the one hand, we're using it to invest in the organic growth of the business, right? This is a growth engine inside of Onit, and we've got a multi-product strategy, and eventually you'll see a multi-vertical strategy, not just legal departments, but finance, where we continue to sell into. So the majority of this is about funding the organic growth of the business. Keep doing exactly what we're doing that's working. New products, right? We are working hard on a full contract lifecycle management product. We already sell contract management solutions today, but we lack a couple of big features that let us not compete with iCertis and Aptus as well as we want to. And so we're investing heavy in contract lifecycle management. And if I have my way, we'll be introducing that this year, and it will be a well-established product by this time at the show next year. But then it's also acquisitions. Figure out how you augment, because there's always the build versus buy. When you're a young company, you're always trying to build. But there are other technologies that we could bring to bear that augment the organic story, don't replace the organic story.
And would those be acquisitions that would fit within the aptitude kind of environment, or is that what you'd be looking at as something that can help expand out that environment, or going off in different directions altogether?
Kind of both, right? Both things are opportunities. So as we're moving into contract lifecycle management, there are technologies we could augment the platform and make that product stronger. But there are other product sets that fit the Onit strategy of process automation or workflow automation that may not be hey, let's just replace their technology with ours, right? And so we're looking at both right now. There's a way where they all fit to build the company that we're trying to build. And so they're all possibilities.
So 5 years from now, what's Onit going to look like?
5 years from now, holy smokes, we're going to be a lot bigger. And it's possible.
Are you still going to be there, Eric?
I hope. I mean, look, I'm in here for the long haul. I wasn't ready to call it. We could have sold on it completely if we were done. There's too much promise here. I hope to still be here. I hope to still be growing it. You're going to see a much bigger international practice from Onit, and I think you're going to see us in 3 or 4 vertical markets. And so we'll be big in fintech, I believe, at that point. We're already selling into that space. It's just not the primary effort of the company. I think you'll see a much bigger company. I don't know if I'll have time for you anymore in 5 years, Bob.
Well, I do appreciate that you had time for me today. Before I wrap up, any last words? Anything else you want to say about Onit before we wrap up?
Well, I mean, come talk to us. We've solved over 200 different process automation problems. So we have standard ones that we sell out of the box, but every single day we're talking with folks about very custom, hey, I do it this way, can you do that? And that's a perfect use of our aptitude platform.
Yeah. Does that continue? I mean, as you continue to grow, do you keep doing the custom stuff, or do you focus more on the out-of-the-box stuff, the apps and whatever?
Yeah, look, well, so there's also a difference of who does the implementation, right? And so more than half of the implementation of Onit products are done by third-party consultants. And so in that world, we're happy for them to do bespoke things that we may never sell again, but to solve a real problem. When it comes to what Onit implements, we'll look at it strategically. And so we've got Fortune 10 customers that started with a custom application that they weren't ready to replace matter or spend management, but they had a very real need. And so we were able to come in and solve that problem, and then you see us evolve into replacing their full matter spend management. So we'll look very strategically. If it's a company that we don't see big expansion opportunities, and it's like a $10,000 app, that's not a good fit for Onit. But our consulting partners can implement those all day long.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time out of this busy Legal Week, Legal Tech show to talk to me. It's been a pleasure.
You too. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks to Eric Elfman for taking time out of his busy schedule here at Legal Week to speak with me. That's it for this week. This is Bob Ambrogi. Join us again next time for another episode of Law Next.